Hi everyone, this is Jim. Before I get going with this video, I wanted to give an update. I'm going to be playing in a tournament over the weekend, the Larry Evans Memorial Chess Tournament, going on from April 3rd through April 5th. So I won't be uploading videos for a while. In fact, I don't get back until the 6th, and then my first video back will be probably on April 7th. But while I'm gone, there's a lot of interesting things going on in the chess world. For one thing, the Women's World Chess Championship is still going on. It's now in the final round, which is in the form of a match between Natalia Poganina from Russia and Maria Muzicek from the Ukraine. They're going to have a four-game classical time control match starting on April 2nd. And that will go for 4 days, and then there will be a tie break if necessary. So when I come back, probably the first video I will do will be the results of the Women's World Chess Championship and with the games selected from their match. And also at the same time, there's the U.S. Chess Championship and the U.S. Women's Chess Championship taking place in St. Louis. That's already started. It started on April 1st. The first round has been played. And that looks to be a very exciting championship. It's maybe one of the strongest in many years because we have, for the first time, Wesley So playing in this as well as Hikaru Nakamura. So we have two players that are among the top 10 in the world. Wesley So is from the Philippines, but he moved to the U.S. recently and is now playing on our side. So it should be a very interesting championship to take a look at, and hopefully I can do some videos on that as well after I get back. But to keep you entertained while I'm not uploading videos, I'll put a couple of links in the description to this video where you can actually find live coverage of the U.S. Chess Championship and also the pointer to the Women's World Chess Championship. So enjoy that, and I will see you when I get back. Anyway, this video is about my Blitz game number 430. My opponent played d4 here, and for a while now I've been trying to get the Chigorin defense. I've been trying to play the Chigorin defense, but my opponents have been stubbornly refusing to play the main move of c4. I've seen a lot of knight f3s here, which is the second choice, and even one bishop g5, the Hudson attack. But, well, finally I get a c4. So I have my chance to play the Chigorin. That's knight c6. You can see that's the fourth choice after the three pawn moves, which are the main moves: the classical Queen's Gambit declined, the Slav, and the Queen's Gambit accepted. All very respectable lines. Knight c6, though, is an interesting way to play and not bad. And my opponent just takes the pawn. That's one of the three main ways to play here. The other two moves are just bringing the knights out. Very logical play from white. Taking is maybe one of the more interesting ways to play, and it shows some of the key features of the Chigorin defense, so I'm glad I got an opportunity to play this line. Immediately there's the threat to take the d-pawn, so it's a mistake, which actually I've seen before. It's a mistake to play knight c3 because black can just grab a pawn then. So you have to defend the pawn. Knight f3 is possible, but e3 is the main move here and the most common way to defend the pawn and probably the best. And now black has to work immediately to undermine the center with e5. And e5 is really the only move available to undermine the center because the c-pawn is blocked. That's one of the reasons why the Chigorin defense is not played so often, is it's just a bit unusual. Almost all the other lines in the Queen's Gambit have the idea of pushing the c-pawn forward at some point to break open the center. But in the Chigorin, you're blocking that with the knight, but you push immediately with e5. And now knight c3 is played here, kicking the queen. And this is the second key point about the Chigorin, is you don't retreat the queen, but you pin the knight. And you're willing in this defense to give up your bishop for a knight, giving up the bishop pair advantage. But in exchange, you get some activity for your pieces. So this is a typical trade-off you see in the Chigorin. So after bishop to d2, the queen is once again threatened. And you don't move the queen. What you do is you take the knight. And white can take back either with the bishop or the pawn. He chose to take with the bishop, which makes sense. Threatens to just win the pawn on e5. So black takes. And then knight e2 is the main move here, to gather up the pawn with the knight. Notice that the pawn is pinned, so I can't take the bishop. My queen is just sitting here on d5 unprotected, so that the pawn can only go forward. It can't take, or I would lose the queen. So there's time for white to play a move like knight e2 to round up the pawn. Instead he played knight f3, maybe with the same idea, but well, I can pin the knight, and this turns out to be good for black. So I've got a good advantage out of the opening here, although I have to say I don't play it right. I miss the idea here. He goes and takes the pawn. He could, in fact, play the move bishop e2, just continuing to rely on this pin and protecting his knight, or unpinning his knight so he can take back with the knight. But he went ahead and took the pawn. And here I should take the knight. This is how I played it wrong. I didn't recognize entirely what was going on. I thought, oh, I shouldn't give up the bishop pair. But his bishop rather, on d4 is under attack. So if you follow through this sequence, I take, say he takes back with the queen, I keep taking, he takes back with the pawn, and now it's my turn to move, and I can just grab this bishop here, and we get this endgame where it's a bishop versus a knight, but white does not have the bishop pair, so there's no particular advantage in material, and white has these horrible doubled pawns. He's got this terrible pawn structure. So this is an endgame with advantage to black. So that's the way it should be played. So that was my chance, and I had another chance in a move or two. But well, I immediately took the bishop. He took back with the queen, and once again I could have taken the knight. It's not maybe quite as good in this line because the pawn structure doesn't get messed up. But well, actually, I guess it does. After I take the knight. I take that back. After I take the knight, I'm defending the queen, so he can't just play queen takes queen. He's got to take the bishop. He can throw in queen a4 check. That's the move to avoid having his pawn structure damaged. Then say I block with c6, and then he grabs the bishop. So there's some minor pawn structure damage, and the queens are on. Oh, this would still be good for black, but I just took back, and so I was just missing this bishop takes f3 idea. But I did guarantee that my opponent doesn't have the bishop pair. So now we have a situation where the material is pretty even. There's a little bit of imbalance in that my opponent has 4 pawns on the king side, 2 on the queen side, whereas I have 3 and 3. And I get to castle first, so I still have some lead in development here. And let's see, this is a long game, so I'm going to go forward through these parts pretty quickly. It looks like the chess engine prefers white, even though I managed to get castling in and I'm going to get my knight out. He's got a well-posted knight in the center, and he's got an extra pawn in the center, maybe giving white some edge. I should be thinking about ideas like c5 to kick this knight away. So, but like I said, I'm going to go forward through some moves pretty quickly because it's a long game, and I'll pause and talk about certain key turning points in the game. So let's go forward. He kicks the bishop, develops with a tempo on my pawn. I bring my knight out, and a4, he starts his attack. So we can see the setup already, and this is one of the reasons for white's edge in this, is that his pawns are a little quicker than mine. I haven't started pushing my pawns forward, but with opposite side castlings, we're going to do the classical pawn storm attack. It looks like white will get there a little bit sooner. But right here is one of those points. I played the move knight to g6. And with the idea, it's probably a good idea in general of getting my knight to a better square, maybe gaining a tempo on his bishop. But this was my last chance to play the move c5, and I really should play it here to kick back this knight to a square that's not so good. And with that kind of move, the game would be about even. After knight g6, white's steamroller attack gets going. And notice that he played b4 immediately there, so I no longer have the option of playing c5. So let's go forward some moves. White keeps the advantage through most of this part. I get my pawns rolling, and I wait until he pushes his pawns all the way forward, and then I block with the move b6. So I've got a momentary stability over here, but I have a weakness in this c-pawn, and also have a weakness on the back rank. If these rooks ever get lifted off the back rank, the king is subject to a checkmate because his only escape square is guarded. So there are some problems for black in this position, but still playable. You'll see the edge is not not too horrible. But my next move is an outright mistake. So my plan, of course, is to push these pawns, and I should start out by pushing f5 and then g4. I pushed g4 immediately, and this is just a mistake for tactical reasons. My opponent can take this pawn, and when I take back, which I did, he can just take the knight, and that opens up the square on c6. So this is just a big mistake. He could have taken here, and when I take back, knight c6 check picks up the exchange. So that would be just winning material for white. He didn't spot this idea. He played knight c6 check immediately, giving me a chance to take it with the bishop. And even though my bishop has gone off of the defense of the knight and I have two pieces hanging, my opponent can still only take one at a time. And so he chooses to take the bishop, which is the right way to take. If he takes the knight, then I can take a pawn with the bishop. So I come up out of that up material. So he takes the bishop, and this keeps the material balanced, and it also keeps the bind on my c-pawn. So this is good for white anyway. It's just that white could have won the game pretty much outright by taking and then forking first. First taking and then forking instead of forking first. Okay, so I play f5, defending my knight. Rook a c1. Let's roll through a few more moves. These are pretty common moves. I try to maneuver my knight back to defense of the king, and I allow him to pick up a pawn here, so white's advantage has increased. There was one opportunity here, I should say, right here. Instead of the knight maneuver, I should have brought my rook to e7, putting it opposite this pawn and pinning it against the bishop. And that would be an interesting way to play after rook e7. If he takes, I take the bishop. He can grab the c-pawn, but he's not mating me. I have enough defense on the back rank to hold that off at the moment. So anyway, I do the knight maneuver instead, and I'm down an extra pawn, as well as white has a good position here. So white is just winning, and this was a nice trick, bringing his rook opposite mine. I can't take because he'll just checkmate me. So that's an example of that back row weakness coming back to haunt me. So going forward, to the next key point, I blockade this pawn so that the bishop won't harass me, and then I start maneuvering my knight over to take advantage of his bishop, which seems to be somewhat restricted in space. But through all of this, white maintains the advantage. But his next move is a mistake. He plays the move g4. So I guess here's a chance, a tactical opportunity chance for you. Why is g4 a mistake? Okay, well, the problem with g4 is that it undefends the bishop, so this bishop is loose right now. If I take with check, though, yeah, it's not loose just yet. I'm sorry. The rook is defending it as well as the pawn. But after I take en passant, he can't take back with the pawn, because then his bishop is loose. The pawn would block the defense of the bishop by the rook. So he's forced to take back with the rook, which he didn't really want to do. And that leaves him with his extra pawn is this doubled pawn. And, well, I can take off the bishop. So we get this rook and pawn endgame. And actually, I have the advantage here, because I can immediately take this pawn. And it's a mystery to me why I didn't take it. So because of his mistake, I momentarily equalize. But I throw it away in the next move with the rook d6 instead of taking the pawn. So I can't explain that one. But this leads to an endgame, which is good for white. And he keeps his edge for a while. Let's see. Right here. Rook d7 is not the most precise move. So this is an interesting moment here. He can throw in the check to chase my king back in the corner. But the key idea here is actually this pawn push, f6. And then when I take the pawn, to give this check. And this chases my king off the back rank, and his pawn on a6 is still guarding the b7 square, so my king is forced to c7, and now rook a8 is a very typical kind of technique, attacking the a-pawn, and I can't get back to defend it. All the squares around it are covered by my opponent's pawn and rook, and then my rook can't get over there either. My king is blocking the way. So this pawn can't be defended, and white is just winning. So that's the way to win this endgame. After rook d7, we now get into kind of an even endgame. I take on f5. He could still, I guess, play a little better with throwing in the rook b7 check. Interesting. So he just grabbed the pawn on d6, and I grab a pawn. Now we're in an endgame that's drawn. And it stays drawn for quite a while, so let's fast forward. These are all kind of normal moves here. I'm trying to activate my pawns. He's trying to activate his. He's using his king to help his pawn come forward. This is all good. I drop my rook back so as to... I want to waste as few moves as possible, so I dropped it all the way back, because he can keep chasing the rook if I just drop back a little bit. And I want to buy myself enough time to push my pawn forward. So you can see this all stays in the range of even until that move, king d3. So how can white draw this game? We see both pawns are equally close to queening, but my rook is in front of his pawn, and he's not got any way to stop my pawn at the moment. So it is a tricky situation, but he can still draw this. And so this is kind of an instructive drawing technique, so I wanted to show this. Rook to d5 check, and I would move my king forward, trying to help the pawn promote. Rook d4 check, keep going forward, and now king to e5, holding on to his f-pawn. He can't give that up. And now I move the king forward, or the pawn forward, I guess. Let's try pawn b2, and he can bring his king forward. Rook d1 or rook d3 check, it says. Rook d1, say. Just planning to intercept this pawn. I bring my king forward to promote it. He brings his king forward, and now I push and promote, and he takes. And then this is the drawing technique. You see, he's exchanged his, he's sacrificed his rook for my pawn, but my king is far out of play now, and his king and pawn are going to win my rook. And so we'll be in a drawn situation. Say f7, I try to bring my king up. He goes here, and now I'm forced to take the... Well, I could gain one more move by retreating the rook, but he's going to queen, takes. I bring my king forward, and both of us are close enough that these rook pawns, neither one are going to score. So this is a draw. And that's the idea, is sacrificing your rook to stop your opponent's pawn and then winning your opponent's rook with your pawn. So that's how, when you have two unopposed pawns, that's how you can draw those endgames, when there's still rooks on the board. Anyway, so king d3 is the losing move. He needed to give those checks and get his king closer to his own pawn to help it queen. The problem is his king is not going to be able to stop this pawn. So let's go forward. I don't play the most accurate moves there. It would have been a little faster for me just to play rook b8 at some point, but I always keep the advantage here. And right until, I think king b1 is actually a draw. I need to push the b pawn, just keeping up with this idea. I step in front of the pawn, and momentarily he has another chance to draw with this f7 idea. Let's look at this drawing idea. b2, and rook to d5. Now let's see, it's white's turn. Rook to d5. I'm not sure what that does. I would have put my rook behind the pawn. Let's see. I'm going to try to lift my rook to get my king out. And oh, I can't ever lift my rook. That's the problem here. This threat of queening forces my rook to stay on the back rank. And whenever my king comes out to the side, then he can check. And if I step forward towards his rook, he can take the pawn. So all I can do is keep going back and forth. Let's see. Oh, this is suddenly winning. So what's the idea here? King to d3. This threatens the check. I'm not sure. Here. And then he can check me again. If I come towards the rook, oh, then he can take the pawn. So he just needs to waste a move there. Okay, pretty tricky stuff. So there was one more chance to draw the game, but he played rook d3 instead, and now it's finally winning for me. Let's see, play forward a few moves. The rooks come off. I get the queen, and my queen is in time to stop his pawn. So I was close. I had the queen with check there. But this worked, and he ran to the corner, and I checkmated him. So that's how the game ended. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of instructive. So as I mentioned, I will be away playing at a chess tournament, the Larry Evans Memorial Tournament in Reno. There will be other chess activity going on while I'm gone, and I will try to catch up when I get back. See you then. Bye.